Did you know that rolling around on the ground with other men could dramatically increase the quality of your life? I know it sounds pretty crazy, right? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and martial arts in general can have a profound number of benefits for the practitioner. In this video, I'll explain some of the more common and universal benefits that most people experience from training martial arts, as well as one that is not so common, but by far has been the biggest and most helpful benefit that I've personally experienced from training martial arts. So I'll give a little brief history on my experience with martial arts, which explains why I'm kind of qualified to talk about this. I've been training martial arts on and off my whole life. I'd say more so on than off. I started in karate, as most kids do with people in my generation, and I trained that for about 7 years, and then kind of dabbled in a few other things. And then right before my 27th birthday, I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and basically fell in love with that, and basically trained it consistently for about 4.5 years, which is around when I got my purple belt, and then quit for a few years and then came back to it and had, say, been really consistent over the last 3 years of my training. I've also dabbled in other martial arts and continued to train them, which include judo, boxing, and Muay Thai, but I wouldn't consider myself nearly as proficient in them as I am with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I'll explain a few of the benefits that myself and most people experience from training martial arts. Benefit number one should be pretty obvious, and that is to be able to better defend yourself. And I will go even beyond that and say it's not only to be able to defend yourself better, but to be able to defend other people who might be defenseless. I'll give a brief example of this with a shortened version of a story where I had to use Jiujitsu in order to defend somebody else. And this occurred about 1.5 years ago. So I was seeing my optometrist at the time to get some new scleral contact lenses. And this was around January to February 2023, and I was there for basically exactly a month. And around one of the last nights I was there, or actually days I should say, I went to South Beach to go to the beach, and it ended up raining, so I decided to check out one of my favorite bars down there because I didn't feel like going back to the hotel right away. I ended up meeting a lady down there, and we were talking for a while, and she wanted to check out a different bar. So we decided to walk down to this bar. And along the way, there was this guy who I believe was a homeless man who became very irate with her when she was talking to him. On the way, I don't really know what it was said in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish that well, so I'm not really sure what was said. And he became very aggressive towards her. So I confronted him and asked him, what his deal was. And he ended up squaring up with me like he wanted to fight. So I tried to just tell him to back off and de-escalate the situation. And eventually he did, and we went our own way and ended up going to the other bar. And then after being there for a little bit, we decided to go back to the original bar. And we were walking back there, and she took me through an alleyway. And just out of nowhere, the same guy shows up, and he's even more angry and agitated. And looking back now, I think this was a setup, but at the time, I didn't think that at all. So anyway, he became even more aggressive towards her and towards me, and he looked like he was going to hit her. So I arm dragged him to take his back. I sunk in a rear naked choke while standing up. Basically held onto the choke while I threw him to the ground. I landed on top of him and mount, and he was face down. And I held the choke until he went unconscious because I didn't want to have to deal with him again. And I didn't know if he had any weapons or whatever. And I put him to sleep. And then The scariest thing was he didn't get up for probably a good 30 seconds. And it was kind of frightening because I thought I might have killed him. And thankfully he got up. And, by that time we were already on our way and everything. So it can be quite useful, again, not only to defend yourself, but for defending other people. And if I hadn't trained at all, I'm not really sure what I would have done in that situation. Again, looking back at it, I think it may have been a setup, but at the time it seemed like the right thing to do. She's a very tiny woman and seemed very scared when the guy grabbed a hold of her. And again, I thought he was going to hit her. And I had already run into him once before, and he was irrational, and logic wouldn't have gone through to him. So I did what I thought I had to do at the time. So I'd say the next biggest reason that people get into training martial arts, and the next biggest maybe benefit that can be derived from training, is that people want to get in better physical shape, and training martial arts can get you in really good physical shape and conditioning. I personally work out usually about 4 times a week, going to the gym. But when I go to the gym, I mainly just lift weights, and I don't really have a desire or energy to really do any additional cardiovascular work. So for me, the only time I'm really getting any cardio in, if you can consider weightlifting to be cardio, which the way I train, it's not very cardio intensive, is through training martial arts, because I don't want to be at the gym any longer than I have to be. And for me and a lot of people, running on the treadmill for a half hour or climbing, 100 stairs of flights on the Stairmaster is not enjoyable whatsoever. I'd say the third biggest reason people get into training martial arts is because of the community. Community at martial arts schools are usually very close-knit and very strong, and you usually will meet a lot of amazing people there. I met so many amazing people and some of my best friends throughout the years from training martial arts. So it can vary from school to school, basically, but I found that most schools I've trained at, pretty much everybody there is just a great human being, and it just gives you the sense of belonging that I feel like a lot of people need and should have in their life. There are, of course, multiple other benefits to training martial arts, but I don't want to make this video too long. So I'm going to get into the benefit now that I have found to be the most beneficial out of them all, and what I get the most from by training martial arts, and I'd say particularly jiu-jitsu. This benefit really has nothing to do with any type of physical benefits, but it is purely psychological. Again, I've experienced this with other types of martial arts, but I'd say mainly of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and this benefit is one of meditation and complete immersion. I have found Jiu-Jitsu to be one of the most powerful tools for meditation. I have tried traditional meditation where you sit alone, in a quiet room, potentially listening to some ambient, relaxing music and focus on your breathing. I've also tried guided meditation before, and I have a very hard time not letting my mind wander while I'm trying to perform these activities. However, when I'm training jiu-jitsu, I'd say especially when I'm sparring, I found this to be one of the few times where my mind doesn't wander and I am completely present and in that moment that is happening. Like, I literally do not think about all my health issues and all the other problems and things going on in my life. And it's very hard to think about those things when someone is more or less trying to harm you. Sure, my training partners aren't actually trying to harm me, but it's basically practicing a situation or a simulation where you're more or less fighting for your life, because literally the other person is trying to break your limbs or could even strangle you to death. So therefore, it's very hard to think about anything else. So basically, when I'm training is one of the few times I'm not thinking about all the other just bad stuff going on in my life, and it gives me a much needed break from constantly thinking about my vision issues or other health issues or anything like that. And lots of times those effects will even last a few hours after I'm done training. Therefore, the psychological benefit that I get from training is something that I'd be considered to be the most beneficial thing I derive from training martial arts, and is the main reason that I still continue to train to this day. So basically, to wrap things up, Jiu-Jitsu has had a tremendously positive impact on my mental health. Of course, there are other benefits I've derived from it, such as the ones I discussed earlier. I strongly encourage everyone to try out some type of martial arts training. I think there are just so many benefits you receive from training, and it's just a great vehicle for personal development and just becoming an overall better human being. If anything I said resonates with you at all, then feel free to subscribe to my channel. I've made this channel to share my life experiences and wisdom that has come from that, and in the hopes of maybe helping others out there. I've been through a lot in my life, and I know that other people have, and I figured that people can at least relate to some of the content that I put out there. So as always, until next time, stay strong, warriors.